My girlfriend, with whom I had been in a relationship for 7 years, finally agreed to my marriage proposal. On the day we were to register our marriage, I dressed up especially well. However, while I was handling the paperwork, I received an urgent phone call. She asked me to take care of some company matters first. When I returned home and saw the 2 brand new marriage certificates, I was deeply moved and vowed to treat her well for the rest of my life. That night was supposed to be our wedding night, but she made an excuse to go back to her parents' home. I didn't suspect anything until I saw her marriage certificate with her first love on Weibo, with the registration date being today. At that moment, it felt as if I had been struck by lightning, and I realized that the marriage certificate I had saved was actually fake. I helplessly suggested breaking up. She frowned and, somewhat impatiently, said, "Ethan Zhao, could you please stop being so unreasonable? I'm really busy right now." The first love beside me tried to explain, "It's all my fault. Ethan must have misunderstood." Claire responded, "Don't pay attention to him. He's always making a fuss about these things. It's really annoying." Her cold words pierced my heart. I knew that this relationship had to end. I sat in the living room all night. The alarm clock rang at 7 in the empty hall, but Claire still hadn't come back. I took one last look at this former home and then began to pack my luggage. Just as I was putting my things into the suitcase, Claire walked in. She paused for a moment, her expression dark, as she approached me. "Ethan, are you still causing a scene? Didn't we already get the marriage certificate?" Her tone was so assertive that it almost made me doubt myself. But that's not the case at all. As usual, Claire angrily sat down on the sofa, waiting for me to comfort her. I used to love her deeply and feared that her anger would hurt her health, so I was willing to back down first, regardless of right or wrong. However, I am really tired this time. When disappointment accumulates to a certain extent, it can feel like your heart is dying. I left her the fake certificate and the keys to the villa. "Let's break up." When Claire saw my indifferent attitude, her tone became sharp with anger. "Ethan, what do you mean? You urged me to get married every day, and now that I've agreed, you want to break up. Are you messing with me? You spend my money every day, live in my place, and yet you dare to give me a hard time? Are you jealous because I saw Lucas Xiao last night? The truth is, it's not as complicated as you think. He was simply having a bout of depression, and I just went to check on him." Seeing Claire getting more and more agitated, I interrupted her. "Claire, do you really think I should be grateful for the 2 fake certificates you gave me?" Upon hearing this, she obviously became flustered, and her gaze started to wander. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" I coldly smiled and handed her the screenshot on my phone. "Claire, what do I mean to you? Last night, out of boredom, I was scrolling through Weibo and unexpectedly came across 2 photos of a wedding certificate posted by Lucas, Claire's first love from her youth, in my follow list. If the other person on that marriage certificate weren't my wife, I would genuinely wish him well. Seeing that news left me breathless, as if my heart were being squeezed tightly, unbearable pangs of sadness overwhelming me. The post was quickly deleted, as if it had been an accidental action. I stared blankly at the screenshot on my phone, desperately telling myself that this couldn't be real. Claire and I were already married. There had to be some kind of mistake. In my anxiety and fear, I tried to reach out to Claire to ask her what was going on. But my phone rang many times, only to produce the cold, harsh notification tone, and eventually the call was automatically disconnected. Unable to contain myself, I reached out to a friend who works at the Civil Affairs Bureau. As a result, I found out that my marital status in the system is still single. It's truly unbelievable. I felt drained of all energy and could barely hold my phone. The phone slipped from my hand and fell to the ground, shattering the screen into pieces, just like my own mood, which was equally shattered. The truth is so cruel that I can no longer deceive myself. The reality pierced me like a poisoned blade, causing immense pain. Claire's expression softened slightly, and she was about to explain when the sound of the door lock opening interrupted her. Lucas walked in. Although he was an outsider, he easily opened the door to my and Claire's home as if there were no obstacles. His words were filled with urgency. Claire, it's all my fault. I was so happy that I accidentally posted it on my personal Weibo account. I didn't expect that this matter would cause you to argue. It's really my fault. Ethan, it's all my problem. So please don't blame Claire. If it will make you feel better, I'm willing to do anything. Lucas looked like he was about to kneel down to apologize, but before his knees could touch the ground, Claire gently helped him up with concern. Lucas, this has nothing to do with you. You haven't done anything wrong. Claire turned to me, her eyes devoid of guilt. Unlike the sympathy she had for Lucas, her tone toward me was marked by clear dissatisfaction. Ethan, Lucas has been diagnosed with severe depression and had once lost all hope for survival. His only hope of living is to marry me. We've known each other for over 20 years, and I can't just stand by and do nothing. If I were really that cold-hearted, would you still like me? Claire tried to position herself on a moral high ground to make me understand her. But what's the basis for that? Faced with this farce, I felt exhausted and quietly said, "Let's break up." My indifferent attitude clearly upset her. She replied, "Ethan, I promise you, once I help Lucas get better, I'll divorce him. By then, we can still be like we used to." I asked, "Are you really that impatient? You've already waited 7 years. What's the difference in waiting a little longer?" I gave a self-deprecating smile, only to realize that in her heart, I had always been an unimportant second choice. Watching Claire support Lucas, the two of them close and intimate, inevitably caused me pain. In order to maintain my dignity and composure until the end, I picked up my suitcase and prepared to leave. It was time to give you all more space. Unexpectedly, Lucas suddenly knelt down in front of me, quietly crying, his voice choked with emotion. "It's all my fault. I should be the one to go. I'll leave right now and won't bother you anymore." Seeing this scene, Claire's expression darkened completely. "Ethan, that's enough. Quickly apologize to Lucas. Don't you know that his illness cannot handle stress? It will cause him a lot of pain. I never expected that the person I love would act this way when facing another man. I decided not to get entangled any longer. I would just leave and not look back." Behind me, Claire's angry voice rang out, "Ethan, if you leave, even if you beg me on your knees for forgiveness, I won't listen to you." Inertia of thought made me pause for a moment. I was truly afraid of her getting angry. In the past, if I had seen her like this, I would have already knelt down to apologize. But this time is truly different. I have completely let go. After leaving home, I felt like my life had lost its direction, and I was especially confused. Over the years, I had prioritized Claire's needs completely, forgetting about myself. Now, as I suddenly bring this relationship to an end and bid farewell to the past, I feel a deep pain in my heart. To numb myself, I drank a lot of alcohol, hoping to get drunk. I originally wanted to forget Claire, but the memories of her became even more vivid in my mind. Claire and Lucas were my classmates in college. They were each other's first love and a couple that everyone envied on campus. I liked her, but I knew that she had feelings for someone else and didn't pay much attention to me. I buried these feelings deep in my heart. Although the roses are fragrant, they are not blooming for me. Just being able to see her from a distance at school brings me joy for the entire day. I thought this was the extent of the distance between us, but unexpectedly, a sudden incident occurred. The Fong family went bankrupt due to mismanagement, and Claire's father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. Her closest lover, Lucas, could have helped her, but he was forced to break up and chose to go abroad for further studies. Thus, they went on different paths. At that time, Claire was like a resilient bulrush, quickly emerging from the shadows of heartbreak. To make money, she started taking on various part-time jobs, even working as a bartender and serving drinks at a bar. I did not look down on her at all. Instead, I felt even more sympathy for her. I care about her character. That night, I found Claire on the roadside, about to faint. She had been drugged with spiked alcohol by someone with ill intentions. There were several strong men following her. One of them told me not to meddle, saying she was what they wanted. At that moment, I was like a lifeline for Claire, coming to her rescue unexpectedly. She grabbed my sleeve, pleading for my help. My heart softened. When faced with their threats, I didn't back down. Instead, I called the police right away. Later, I took her, still flushed, to the hospital. Claire had always thought our meeting was a coincidence, but in reality, it was all a result of my determined pursuit. I was worried about her safety when she returned to school alone at night, so I always followed her back to the dormitory, regardless of the rain and wind. I was afraid she would think I had ulterior motives, so even after we got together, I never told her about that. Eventually, I mustered up the courage to approach and pursue her. She agreed to be my girlfriend. To this day, I remember the moment I confessed to her. When she said yes, I felt like a child who had finally received the candy they longed for. I felt like the happiest person in the world. After graduation, I started my own business, solely to provide her with a better life. In order to secure investment, I ended up hospitalized multiple times for gastrointestinal bleeding due to excessive drinking, but I couldn't bear to let her know. I was afraid of seeing her cry, but it turned out I was overthinking things. From the past to the present, it seems that only Lucas can receive her special affection. I felt a slight burning in my eyes and a tickle in my nose. Since Claire's father passed away, I realized that although she appeared strong on the outside, she actually lacked a sense of security within. After the company got onto the right track, I gave most of my shares to Claire without charge. She was eager to strive in the business world, and I was willing to take a step back and be her supporter. I thought that our relationship and future were heading in a positive direction. However, when I first proposed to Claire, she hesitated. Although I sensed that something was off, at the time I thought she was just unprepared. It wasn't until later that I realized her unusual behavior was due to Lucas reappearing in our lives after having disappeared for several years. I proposed to her several times, but each time she responded with vague refusals. Until the most recent time, I didn't have much hope, but to my surprise, she agreed. I felt an overwhelming sense of excitement. I have imagined our life after marriage more than once, and now it can finally become a reality. Everything feels like an illusory bubble. 2 marriage certificates, one real and one fake, reveal the tragic truth. Claire doesn't love me. After a night of drinking, I have a terrible headache, and my phone keeps vibrating annoyingly, so I just turn it off. The world has finally quieted down. This is the exclusive ringtone I set for Claire. In the past, I would have answered the call immediately in such a situation. But now there's no need for that. The hotel doorbell keeps ringing, and there's also knocking on the door. It seems that the person outside has no intention of leaving, so I reluctantly get up out of annoyance. When I open the door, I thought it would be the waiter. My tone was sharp because I had already put up the do not disturb sign. Ethan, did you forget what day it is today? I've prepared a banquet and you must come. We can have a good chat afterwards. I rubbed my eyes and checked again. Standing outside the door was Claire. It would be a lie to say I wasn't surprised. She had always been quite aloof, so why was she coming to find me this time? I couldn't deceive myself. The feeling that should have been dormant started to surge again in my heart. I found myself regretting that just a few of her words could leave me so troubled. I am very clear about what day it is today. Today marks the 7th anniversary of our time together. She used to be indifferent to such occasions, and it was always me who remembered and went out of my way to prepare little surprises. But this time, she actually took the initiative to organize a banquet for me. If it were the old me, I would definitely have found it surprising. My emotions have calmed down considerably now, and I'm not as tense anymore. Although she still affects my mood, I seem to care less than I used to. Get yourself ready. I'll pick you up at 5 sharp. I pretended to be indifferent and coolly shut the door. Whatever. My heart was beating faster than usual, betraying my anxiety. I knew I hadn't completely let go of her, but I also found it hard to forgive her easily. I sighed and decided to take a rest. When I woke up, it was already 5 in the afternoon. Claire had called me several times, but I had not answered. The last message I received said to come downstairs. I organized my thoughts, but I still found my mind to be in a state of chaos, so I forced myself not to think too much. When I went downstairs, Claire's car was already waiting outside. I instinctively opened the passenger door, and as soon as I did, I felt a chill in my heart, as if I was sinking. I exchanged glances with Lucas, who was sitting in the passenger seat. Claire said, "I'm sorry, I'm a bit carsick. Sitting in the front will make me feel better." She got out of the car to open the back door for me. "Ethan, Lucas has been at the hospital for too long. He wants to get some fresh air. It will be good for his recovery. You don't mind, do you?" She naturally pushed me into the car. To be honest, I had lost all expectations for today's anniversary banquet. I couldn't help but mock myself inwardly. "Ethan, what are you even hoping for?" After arriving at the destination, I realized that this was not the romantic date I had imagined for us, but rather a business collaboration. This is Mr. Lee, the renowned designer Ing. The gowns and matching jewelry from the Goose Down and Deadwood series were all designed by him and his team. Allow me to introduce him further. Mr. Lee is someone who has consistently ranked among the top on the rich list. Claire naturally handed me a glass of red wine and gestured for me to keep him company. "Ethan, this is a big client. You need to talk to him and strive for a partnership." If I still couldn't see the situation clearly, I would truly be foolish. Claire simply didn't want to lose this wealthy collaborator. Any mention of anniversaries was just an excuse. "Once we finalize the deal, I will give you a gift." Seeing her lower her posture and speak to me in a gentle tone made me feel a bit uncomfortable. Is my value in her eyes really reduced to this? I forced a smile. "There's no need for a gift, but I hope you can promise me one thing." Claire nodded, indicating that she understood. "Don't worry, it's just about forgiving you, right? I can promise you that right now. After all, I didn't handle that matter as thoughtfully as I should have." Her tone carried a hint of condescension, as if forgiving me so easily was something I should be grateful for. I smiled without saying a word and chose to communicate directly with Mr. Lee. After all, I own shares in the company, so it would be nice to make a bit more money before I leave. I am somewhat well known in the design industry, and the jewelry I create is quite popular among celebrities. Mr. Lee and I engaged in an in-depth discussion about various design concepts, and the atmosphere was very cordial. He handed me a business card, suggesting that if young people wanted to switch jobs, they could always come to him. Claire interjected with a smile, reminding Mr. Lee that I am not only a designer at the company but also a major shareholder. Mr. Lee seemed a bit regretful about this. I took the business card, thinking I would consider it again when the opportunity arises. Claire looked unwell, but it had nothing to do with me. At that moment, Lucas handed me a glass of white wine. "Ethan, Mr. Lee is an important client of the company. You should toast him," he said. I glanced at Claire, but she showed no reaction and didn't stop Lucas from pouring. She clearly knew that I had been drinking to the point of stomach bleeding in order to secure investment and had barely touched alcohol for many years. Mr. Lee was unaware of this and raised his glass, intending to toast with me. I said to him, "Mr. Lee, I'm not feeling well. Can I use tea instead of wine to honor you?" Mr. Lee was about to agree, but at that moment, Lucas chimed in again, saying, "Ethan, aren't you trying to embarrass Mr. Lee? You used to be able to handle 1,000 cups without getting drunk." Lucas's casual remark suddenly made the atmosphere at the dining table awkward. Mr. Lee also seemed a bit displeased, and his expression changed. To ease the tension, Claire, ignoring my objections, handed me a shot of baijiu. She insisted that this was a business discussion and we couldn't be stingy. I was caught off guard and ended up drinking several shots forcefully pushed on me by her. A burning pain throbbed in my stomach, almost making me double over. She poured me another glass of wine. "Mr. Lee, let's down 3 more shots together and don't take it to heart." Unable to hold back any longer, I smashed the wine glass onto the floor. The shards scattered and cut Lucas's ankle, leaving a wound. Claire saw this scene and immediately slapped me, saying, "Ethan, you've gone too far. Not only did you ruin the collaboration, but you also hurt Lucas. How could you do this? Please apologize to everyone right now." I didn't want to argue anymore. I just wanted to catch a cab to the hospital and fight back the metallic taste of blood in my throat. I stumbled out the door, overwhelmed by the intense pain coursing through my body. "Ethan, if you leave like this today, I will divorce you, and I will never forgive you. My mind was a mess, and the last thing I heard before I fainted was Claire's angry voice. She immediately ran to my side and shook me, thinking I was just pretending to be weak. Ethan, don't think that looking pathetic will make me feel sorry for you. In the end, it was Mr. Lee who couldn't bear to watch any longer and called an ambulance for me before leaving. She was stunned for a moment, intending to catch up, but Lucas's anguished cry interrupted her steps. Claire, my foot hurts so much. Only then did Claire realize the situation. Let's go to the hospital and check it out. When she woke up, she found herself staring at a pure white ceiling. The attending doctor looked at her with an expression that didn't seem very good. Knowing full well that she had serious stomach issues, she still dared to drink alcohol, which had already caused gastric bleeding on multiple occasions. This was not a trivial matter. If it continued like this, it could be very dangerous. Claire pushed the door open just in time to hear the doctor's words and felt somewhat at a loss. Ethan, didn't your stomach problems get resolved already? It's just a glass of white liquor. How could it be? I helplessly tugged at the corner of my mouth, unsure of what expression to use in response to her. In my heart, I remembered many things about her, including her menstrual cycle, her favorite dishes, and the anniversary of her father's passing. On that day, she always felt down, and I would try my best to cheer her up. However, ever since Lucas reappeared, she has been paying less and less attention to me. In her life, I seem to have become optional. She asks me this question, doesn't she find it ridiculous? After 7 years of being in love and 10 years of harboring a quiet affection, at this moment, I finally let go. Claire, this is where we part ways. I tucked away all my emotions, but when I said those words, they were filled with unwavering strength as I calmly conveyed the truth to her. At this point, Claire finally understood that I wasn't joking. I was truly going to end our relationship. Panic crossed her face, and tears silently streamed down her cheeks. She didn't want this, it shouldn't have been like this. In the past, seeing her cry would have made my heart ache, and I would have wiped away her tears. But now all I felt was irritation. She had originally planned to say something, but the sudden sound of the door being pushed open interrupted her. Although it was just a minor injury, Lucas hobbled in, leaning on a crutch. He said, Claire, today's incident was due to my lack of consideration. Ethan must have accidentally caused my injury. Despite his words, his tone was filled with grievance, and he occasionally let out a sob. In the past, Claire would always be the first to care about his feelings and comfort him. However, this time the situation had changed. Claire's expression was cold, and her tone was not pleasant. You were indeed in the wrong, why did you have to force him to drink? Lucas sensed the shift in the atmosphere and cautiously said to Claire, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable and in a bad mood. Can you accompany me to see a doctor? Claire ignored him. If you're sick, go get treated. I'm not a psychologist. Lucas sensed her cold attitude and turned to leave the hospital room. Claire didn't chase after him. Instead, she looked at me anxiously. Ethan, please don't be upset. Lucas and I can get a divorce at any time. As soon as you're discharged, we'll go get the certificate, okay? I looked at her coldly. Claire, what do you think I am? Some toy you can manipulate at will? I'm a human being, and I have my own dignity. She shook her head in tears, looking very pitiful. It's not like that, Ethan. The person I love is you. I was wrong this time. Can you give me another chance? Honestly, if I had heard these words before, I would have willingly done anything for her. But now, I just feel annoyed and exhausted. I lay down and turned away, facing the wall, not wanting to talk to her anymore. I accidentally tugged at the wound from my recent surgery, which made me cry out in pain. The ward was completely silent. During this month-long hospitalization, Claire seemed like a different person. She came to the hospital every day to take care of me and keep me company. But unfortunately, my attitude toward her was not friendly. I knew clearly that the bond between us had completely broken. When I was discharged from the hospital, Claire said she would accompany me to handle the paperwork. But when the time came, she didn't show up. She called to say the company was too busy and asked me to wait for her. I couldn't help but chuckle at my own bitterness, realizing I had waited too long and needed to live for myself in the days to come. So, I broke my SIM card, tossed my shattered phone into the water, and got a new phone and a new card, no longer reminiscing about the past. After leaving the hospital, my first move was to sell my shares and convert them into cash. As for the shares that were given to Claire, I do not intend to claim them back. Now, in terms of both emotions and finances, we have completely severed ties. Holding the business card in my hand, I dialed the private number without hesitation. At the villa in the suburbs, Mr. Lee received me. Mr. Lee, I sincerely apologize for the previous incident that caused you trouble. I am here this time to apologize and pledge my loyalty. Mr. Lee didn't seem to care much about it. I plan to establish a branch of a jewelry fashion group overseas, and I am currently looking for a chief designer. The annual salary, along with bonuses, totals in the 8 figures, but it requires the designer to be stationed overseas. What do you think? Are you interested? I accepted this opportunity without hesitation. Looking back, I'm grateful that despite being busy and tired, I never stopped pursuing my career. Now I have the confidence to start anew. After completing the necessary procedures, I hurried to the airport. To my surprise, I saw Claire next to the check-in counter. She was excited to see me and came over to grab my arm. Ethan, didn't we agree to start over? Why aren't you answering my calls? Where are you going? With teary eyes, she snatched the ticket from my hand and tore it to shreds. She said, "Without you, the company can't survive, and neither can I. You want to go abroad, and I disagree." I shook off her hand and frowned, showing my impatience. "Claire, what you're doing now is not worth it." I knew she was a proud person inside, and I realized this would hurt her. Taking advantage of her moment of shock, I turned and walked away. I had just taken a few steps when I suddenly felt a force behind me. The warm and gentle touch made me realize it was Claire who had tightly embraced me, unwilling to let go. Her voice was choked with emotion, and her tone was sincere as she spoke softly to me. "I know I was wrong, Ethan. Please forgive me. Should our years of relationship come to an end just because I made one mistake?" I used a bit of strength and easily broke free from her embrace. "Claire, understand this, we are finished. I don't love you anymore. Even if you could make me stop today, can you really make me stay forever?" In the bustling airport hall, Claire squatted on the ground, crying uncontrollably. "I don't believe it, Ethan. You clearly love me so much. Have you really forgotten?" She was emotionally charged, almost losing control, completely devoid of her usual composure. "Claire, let me go and let yourself go too." Without hesitation, I bought a ticket for the next available flight and quickly left the city. The next time I heard from Claire was through a news report. Reports say that a woman shot a man and then committed suicide. Although her eyes are blurred in the photo, I can almost confirm it's her based on my years of familiarity. Since moving abroad, I haven't followed her closely, but occasionally some former colleagues reach out to me to share their feelings. I know the company has been declining since I left, but that doesn't concern me. After all, it's their own choice. I learned some details and discovered that Lucas's depression was actually feigned. He had some genuine feelings for Claire, but they weren't deep. After going abroad to study, they lost touch. Unexpectedly, Lucas was found out not to be Mr. Zhao's biological son, but rather the illegitimate child of another man, which led to him being expelled from the Zhao family. He was accustomed to a lavish lifestyle, and suddenly facing poverty was hard for him to bear. At this moment, he discovered that his ex-girlfriend, whom he had once abandoned, had returned to the circle of the wealthy. He rolled his eyes and began to think about Claire. Knowing that women tend to be more emotional, he didn't immediately propose a reconciliation. Instead, he took the opportunity of discussing his depression with a psychologist to repeatedly express to her the loneliness and longing he felt after their breakup. As expected, Claire began to feel sympathy for him. After I left, he got involved in the company's business and, using his financial knowledge, directly short-sold the company. Lucas transferred large sums of money into his own name, leaving Claire, as the legal representative, to bear massive debts. When Claire realized everything, Lucas had already gone abroad. Anger and resentment ultimately led her to choose revenge, followed by suicide. Hearing this made me feel deeply regretful. After taking a sip of coffee, I suddenly remembered some unusual details. It was a cold winter day, and the windows were covered with fog, making the outside world appear blurred. I was chatting with a friend in a coffee shop when I suddenly felt an unusual gaze staring at me. I turned to look out the window and saw a hurried figure leaving. At that moment, I thought I must have been mistaken. How could Claire be in this unfamiliar place? But now, looking back, it was just a few days before this incident was exposed. Everything makes sense now. She must have been there to see me one last time. I was taken aback for a moment when I noticed a notification in my inbox. My habit is to handle work emails during my free time. I opened the email and found a video sent by a stranger. As I clicked on the video, Claire appeared on the screen. She was wearing the white dress from the day I confessed my feelings to her, looking beautiful, and walking in the university campus where we first met. "Ethan, do you remember this place? On this lawn, you confessed your feelings to me and promised to treat me well for a lifetime, and I agreed. And by the lake, you kissed me for the first time. You were so nervous that your ears turned red." She kept talking, and I couldn't help but recall those innocent and beautiful moments from our youth. Although she had dressed carefully, the fatigue and weariness in her appearance could not be concealed under the camera's lens. At the end of the video, she smiled gently, but her tears revealed her true feelings. "Ethan, I was wrong. I was terribly wrong. I was foolish to think I could bear to betray your love for me. It was only after losing you that I learned to appreciate what I had. Turns out the person I have always loved is you. For him, I only feel a sense of reluctance." Her clear, large eyes looked toward the camera, sincerely asking for my forgiveness. "In my next life, I will definitely cherish your genuine heart. If there is a next life, can you forgive me?" The video ends here. It would be more accurate to say that this is a suicide note. By that time, she must have already figured out how to take revenge on Lucas. She chose the path of paying with her life, which meant she was destined to follow her own road to ruin. I felt a mix of emotions and suddenly wanted to cry. During this time, I had been abroad, caught up in high-intensity work, and had nearly forgotten about her. A few days ago, I came across a shocking news report that brought back old memories. The only solace I found was that I have completely moved on from that low period in my life. I contacted a lawyer and communicated with the police, ultimately choosing a burial plot for Claire's remains. It was my final farewell to her. I placed chrysanthemums at her gravestone. "Claire, I have never regretted loving you in this life, but this love has been truly difficult. If there is a next life, we will not meet again. I have decided to completely say goodbye to the past from this moment on. The sunlight bathes the earth, and I turn away, stepping toward the future."